Hello, good morning. My name is Beverly Kelley, and I'm here with my husband, Peter Kelley, and we're with Lexington Remembers. And today is October 27th, 2022, and we are here today with Wilda Ward, who has lived in Lexington for a long, long time, and she's got lots to tell us. Before I actually introduce Wilda, I want to say a little bit about Lexington Remembers. It was an organization started by Mary Gillespie back in 2005, and she asked Dan Fenn, Julie Miller, Jackie Ward, and Bob and Francine Edwards to join her and do interviews about with people around Lexington. And it's been going strong ever since. If anyone wants to watch any of these interviews, all you have to do is go on your computer, Google Lexington Remembers, and then click on YouTube, and you'll see them all. And we've done over 80. So they're wonderful. So I hope you'll partake of them if you're interested.
They are wonderful.
So anyway, with that being said, we are here and so pleased to have Wilda Ward with us. She was born in 1926. So if you do your math, she's 96 and a half.
Yeah. And just getting started.
Just getting started. So I'll turn it over to Peter to kind of get Wilda talking about the things she wants to talk about.
It's a real pleasure having you here. You've got a great spirit and you're 96 years young.
Thank you so much.
We know you traveled around a lot before you were 5 years old, but you got to Lexington when you were 5 years old. And we want to hear about the Lexington times. We know you snuck over the line to Lincoln for a little spell, but most of your life has been in Lexington.
Yes.
So let's start with the fact that you came at 5 years old when you came to Lexington.
Yes.
Where did you live?
I lived on the Simonds Hill and Grove Street. And it was all, there were houses on Simonds Road. But Grove Street, I think we were almost one of the last houses as you went from, now I can't think of the street, Simonds Road coming along Grove Street and going towards Bedford. It turned into a dirt road, and then there was a farmhouse up there. And that's where they put cattle in all the way over. Would have been over to what is now Bedford Street, I guess, going up there. And
so your father ran the farm?
My father ran the farm for cattle, and he didn't keep cattle and so forth, but he went west to buy cattle, shipped home to Lexington, and then auctioned them off. His business was as a cattle auctioneer.
So he gathered livestock, at the Simonds Farm on Grove Street.
Yes.
And for those that are perhaps watching this and trying to get a point of perspective, this is before, on Grove Street, before you were to get to the 128 bridge, which is there now. Of course, 128 wasn't there at all.
That's right.
And this was up on the right, and the land went down towards where 128 cut through.
That's right.
And your dad did auctioneering there.
That's right.
And you helped him bring those cattle back.
Oh, this was so much fun. As you know, calves like anything that they can suck. And so the boys from Simonds Hill were all anxious to help. We'd put our fingers down, and the cows would suck our little cattle, like, the small calves, would suck our fingers. Well, then we could bring them out so we could sell them off. And then take them back and bring another one out and so forth. It was all fun.
Actually, Wilda brought a picture of her father auctioning off, and we'll show this maybe later, but there's some cattle in the foreground, and her dad's there auctioning them off. And this was on Grove Street.
Yes.
And what year would this have been then, roughly?
In the middle 30s.
Middle 30s.
Right.
Yeah, I put that, yeah.
Okay, that's a wonderful picture. I'm so glad you brought it.
And you did 3rd and 4th grade here in Lexington?
3rd, 4th, and a couple of months of the 5th grade, right.
Okay. And then your family moved over, just over the line on Route 2A, which was Route 2 in that time, in the town of Lincoln.
That's right.
But very close to Lexington.
Yes.
Right where the monument is, where Paul Revere was captured.
That's right.
And you don't remember him being captured.
No, I wasn't with him.
You were not with him at the time.
You
notice nothing to do with that.
He was captured, but he got free and went on his...
Right.
Yeah.
And so your dad continued there, the auctioneering, and how did you find your way back to Lexington?
Well, Alan Ward, the gentleman that I married, used to come over to play with us here and so forth. He used to have a lot of friends that would come over and help with the auctions.
And where did he live at that point?
He lived on Gleason Road.
In the Manor section.
In the Manor section, right off of Simonds Road.
So not that far from the Grove Street Where you were living.
Oh, 5 minutes
Before
walk.
you moved to Lincoln.
So Alan would come down to
Right.
the Simonds Farm and help out.
Right.
And then when you went to Lincoln, he rode his bike to Lincoln.
That's right. It was just 5 miles.
What was it about this
nice.
Alan fellow that was so special?
Well, he was pretty good looking. That started it.
That started it. Okay.
You said you used to.
And he was 4 years older than I was.
Oh.
And when we lived in Lexington, I always had a pony or two, always. And my father trained Alan how to saddle the pony for me and put that. And 4.5 years made a big difference when I was 5 or 6 years old. So only could I ride my pony if Alan had done it, because all these other boys are all milling around. They were always either riding something that was there or doing something that my father asked them to do and so forth. But Alan always was there, and he always, when it was winter time, he made sure that my skates were tied, and if I fell down for some reason, Alan was there to pick me up. And
Sound like he had a thing for you even
well,
way back
I don't
then.
know whether he knew I was a girl, but
Oh, well, yeah, tell us about
Tell us
that.
the story about you.
You used to be known as Bill.
Bill. Yeah.
Right.
well, he used to, when were in Lincoln, we also had these auctions and so forth, and Alan and the boys. And it's nice because a lot of the boys we kept track of for years and years that lived on Manor Road. A lot of us got married to couples there out of that little group there. And we had a great time. We did. Well, when we get over there, Alan was still coming over here, period. And then Alan played the guitar. He started to play early, in probably 12 years old, and went on to play professionally his whole life. And so when it got to the part that I was 12 and Alan was 16, that was a big difference. He would bring over pictures of his girlfriends, and he drove over in a car, and he didn't even know I existed there,
Well, how did he call you Bill? I mean, how did
No,
the
he didn't
story
call
about
me Bill. Just my father called me Bill.
Oh, and why did he call you Bill? Because you.
Well, I was his boy.
Oh.
I was an only child.
One of the
Right,
reasons,
okay.
as I recall you mentioning how you would travel with your dad out to the Midwest
Yes.
to get cattle and bring them back on cattle trains?
Yes.
And he wanted you to be known as Bill, his son, rather than a daughter, because it was wiser to do that in those days.
I guess. I guess.
You would travel back.
And and nobody, not girls anyway, wore dungarees or anything. And my father used to buy me dungarees because I was around the farm and the animals all the time, riding all the time. And he used to buy dungarees because people didn't. And today, my gosh, girls are in dungarees as much
the
as
time.
boys, which is fun.
Yeah.
So
But
going
you don't
back
want
to,
more of Alan, you've got that.
to Lincoln, when you lived on Lincoln, he was still doing the auctioneering
Oh
there.
yeah, all
Okay.
his life he did auctioneering.
All his life.
Yeah.
Okay. And you remember Hanscom Field because you were very close to what is now the entrance to Hanscom
Yes,
Field.
yes.
Was it there when you were living
No,
there?
no. It wasn't there until almost the time I left.
Oh.
And I can remember, I see I was still a kid, we had a garage there with another garage under it, which was low to the ground. And I remember crawling up there and sitting there watching them build Hanscom Field.
Oh, interesting.
And that would
Yeah.
have been in the late, after the war.
No, this is before the war.
Oh, okay. So they had
Okay.
Hanscom Field in operation during the war years.
They weren't in operation.
Oh,
I think
just a work in progress.
It was a work in process. So,
Okay.
yeah,
so-
yeah.
But then now you've got to tell us, Wilda, about how your husband, Alan Ward, proposed
Or
to you.
how he didn't propose. He
Right.
didn't.
This is
so
a very
this
interesting
is a great
story. This happened during the war. Go ahead.
This was during the war.
He was
and
where? He was over in
Alan was in India.
India. Okay.
And he had written, would be unbeknownst to me, of course, he had written to his father. Now written to his father. I'll leave it there. Because when he first left, he had me go over and meet his mother and father. And I used to go over there a lot for dinner and so forth.
On Gleason Road.
On Gleason Road. And this night particularly, usually we met in the kitchen. It was very informal, little supper. And this time, Mr. and Mrs. Ward were all dressed up. Sunday go-to-meeting clothes. And there's a little bouquet on the table. And I was thinking, oh, it must be one of their birthdays. So I was excited
Sure.
about it, too. We got all through dinner. And Mr. Ward, his name was Isaiah Ward, which I know no one would remember now, but he was known in the area. Isaiah Ward got up and walked around the table, and he said, "My son has given me a very, very important job to do." And I was still concerned. What was it? And he walked over and got something out of the china chest and came back. And he got down on one knee and proposed.
On behalf of
for his
Alan.
son.
For his son. And gave me Alan's class ring from Lexington High School, 1939. Gave Alan the class ring as the token to seal the deal.
Right, right.
Well, I was thrilled. Oh, beyond compare. The answer was yes.
An unequivocal yes.
And then we had a little glass of something, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So then I go home. Of course, Alan's got to have permission from my father.
Oh, okay.
So my father liked Alan a lot, and of course he'd known him since he was 10 years old or 5 or something. And so I got home, and I was all excited about what had happened. And I said, "Is it okay, Daddy, we can get married?" And he said, "When do you want to get married? Saturday?" As you know, from all he did, he had a good sense of humor,
Right.
but I didn't appreciate that time. "When do you want to get married? Saturday?" "No." "Well, where is he?" "He's in India." And Daddy, sure you can get married. That's okay.
Okay.
Whenever he comes home. Well,
And he came
the rest
home in-
is history.
Yes,
And
and,
when-
he came
when-
home in 45.
And is that when you were married in
Yes,
45?
he came home in June of 45. Now, that's a pretty little interesting, too, also. I was at that point the secretary of the superintendent of schools in Lincoln. And I was going to a special class at Columbia University in New York. And it was going to be about let me just pull up, it was going to be about the 20th of June.
Mm-hmm.
Unbeknownst to me, Alan's mother and father at that time, his mother was very sick. And I don't know the problem, but she was at home and was very, very sick. And his family had notified the Red Cross to let Alan come home if possible. The war was now over. This is June.
Okay.
And he was in Florida at the time. And they had notified Alan to come home, okay, fine, for a month. Mm-hmm. That day that he came home and I was going to New York, our trains passed.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that something?
You didn't know that.
No,
but yeah,
and we were one
that's
point
funny.
at about 12 feet apart. But he called me that night, and I didn't go to the course. I left. I flew home.
flew home.
I flew
Okay.
home.
You flew
Okay.
home. This
I
is
flew home from New
1945.
York in
Flew home
1945.
in an airplane?
Cost me $12.
Oh, really?
$12 to fly from New York to Boston.
Yeah.
I'm sure she used an airplane. Well, congratulations
okay.
on that little trip.
And-
So we gotta. This could go on for
I know.
hours, and we want to
You-
make sure we hone in on your time in Lexington.
Right. I just want to mention you were married in the Baptist church in
Yes,
Lexington.
yes.
Okay. And then you moved into Alan's parents' house. The
No,
two.
no. That at that point we stayed at my family's home. We didn't move into Allen's for probably another couple. We already had Sherry's one a year and a half after we were married, and
Oh.
it was in that period of time.
So you lived at your house.
Right.
And Sherry was born, and then you moved into Alan's
right,
family's house on Gleason
and we were there
Road.
for about a year, and then
And then what did you do?
we bought the house in on where we live.
And tell us where that is, and do you remember what you paid for it? Or
Oh, you want to know all that fun stuff?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
the fun stuff.
Interesting to people.
All right, it was a cape, 4-room cape. The upstairs was not finished.
On East Street?
On East Street.
Okay.
And we paid $9,800.
Really?
And
It
your
was
dad thought that was a lot.
3/4 of an acre,
Okay. A lot of
and the
land.
house.
Okay.
And my father thought we were absolutely crazy. Paid $10,000 for our house, especially with the upstairs not finished.
I'd be happy to
that-
give you 15 right now.
And that was 1949.
49.
And to this day, you are still there.
Yes.
And you added a couple of
We've
additions.
had. I
and
have
things.
done 300. Do you want that funny story about Alan?
Sure.
Okay, well, Keith. Alan was great, and anything I ever wanted, he was not a fellow that would say, no, you shouldn't do that, or no, we're not going to do that, or anything like that. I could always do whatever I wanted, and he went along and supported me in anything. So we bought this with the idea that sometime when we found just what we wanted, we'd sell it, enlarge the house or whatever, and go on from there. So one day they were starting to build on East Street and Burroughs Road, and I saw a two-stand house there, two-story house that I liked very much and looked kind of fun. So I decided to come home and tell Alan I'd found another house and so forth. And he was very interested in what I was doing and said, all right, if you want to buy it, go ahead. I'm staying here. 79 years later.
Okay, you're still there.
And 3 additions.
But what did you do in the house besides
Yeah.
have a nice family time
started
raising your
Oh,
daughter? You started
yes,
your own
I
business.
had a kinder group there for 10 years. And that had what I taught school. I had gone to Wheelock nights, taking up courses and so forth, and taught kindergarten, which just for 5-year-olds. And it did that. And Alan had made all of the furniture, and we used a basement for the Bain. Alan had made all the furniture for
The little kids
for the kids.
furniture.
Yep.
And how many kids did you have,
Well, you
roughly?
could have a total of 25.
Ooh,
but
that's a lot.
some came 2 days a week, some came 3
okay.
days a week, some came 5 days a
And
week.
you were licensed too?
Oh, yes.
right,
Oh,
the
yes,
town of
by the town of Lexington.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And then that evolved, from what I understand, into
Yes.
something else.
That involved to the Lincoln Country Day School. We bought we rented the area of the educational wing from one of the churches in Lincoln.
Oh, okay.
And there, a girlfriend of mine who also was a graduate of Wheelock, we joined together and bought that situation. And she had 3 and 4-year-olds. I had just 5-year-olds.
The 5-year-olds. And that was for
And
about
that went
10
on for
years.
10 years.
Okay.
So
You
now
did a lot of things for 10
And
years.
that sort of ended when the town started having kindergarten
That's right.
for the 5-year-olds?
That's right.
That would have been, what,
Oh.
1960, you said, around the 1960s?
Must have been. Must have been.
Yeah, around that time.
And Alan worked at Frost and Higgins in Lincoln.
In Arlington.
I mean, in Arlington, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But then he came back and worked where? On Bedford Street.
McKay's Hardware.
McKay, I'm sure a lot
was
of the
his
viewers
fun.
remember McKay's.
Yeah. First of all, was with Frost and Higgins for many years
right.
in Arlington.
Landscaper.
Landscape business. And then he'd had a heart attack. And so he took things a little bit easier and went to work at McKay's Hardware. They were wonderful people to work for.
You knew the McKays too, didn't you?
Oh, I knew the McKays well.
Yeah.
They were plumbing. H.B. McKay, the father, Harold.
That's right.
And his son,
Donald.
Donald, yes.
I don't know where I've
And now
remembered
his
it.
son has McKay Hardware out in Westford.
That's right.
But the McKay Hardware, and I think the family still owns the building there, is at the corner of Reed Street and Bedford Street.
Right, and Trinity Pharmacy used to be right next door.
Right at the
Yep.
corner was Trinity and
Right.
then McKay Hardware.
Right.
Yep.
And today that building in 2022 is Colorworks Paint
Yep.
Store.
Yep.
Okay, but that corner was commercial.
Yep.
Then, and H.B. McKay was there.
Yep.
And then you were.
Go ahead.
Okay. After you did all those 5-year-olds for many years and made them all bright little kids going into school, you worked where?
Well,
Bookkeeping
yes, I was just jumping there. I went, the first one, I was assistant treasurer at the Lexington Lumber Corporation.
Oh, you were assistant treasurer?
Yes.
Oh,
And you did
So-
their bookkeeping for
Yes.
them, right?
Did-
And for those who don't know of Lexington Lumber Company, it was on Bedford Street, right across from Walgreens, which is there now, and it's now a big sort of contemporary flat roof
Right,
building of offices
Yeah.
and I think medical offices and what have you.
right.
But we'll have a picture of the lumber yard. And
Yes.
I remember, this is in the 60s and 70s, early 70s.
Yeah.
I remember when you told me this earlier in our earlier conversations, I remember you sitting there behind that glass wall, that glass window, doing your bookkeeping stuff when I would go in there and buy things
Isn't
for
that
my
great?
business, which was lumber or whatever, and it was a very popular place. And lumber came by rail car, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know when they stopped doing business, but it was probably in the 70s, mid-70s.
And the reason they stopped doing business, they could have gone on, but they wanted to make a little extension there to put on Anderson window display.
Right.
And that meant they were going to add a certain number of feet to the building.
Right.
Well, the town said, if you do that, you've got to add another parking place out front.
Oh.
And there
Oh, is that
wasn't
right?
room to add another parking place
Because there
out
wasn't
front.
much road.
And the people that came to this place didn't need much time, so the parking lot that
Right.
we had was ample.
Right.
And so Bud said, if we want to enlarge, we can.
Now, is this Bud Baldwin?
Bud Baldwin, I'm
Okay.
sorry,
No,
yes.
the Baldwins owned Lexington.
That's
Lumber.
right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
rather than not being able to expand, he just gave up the business
Right.
altogether and retired.
Right. He said there's no place for this to go anymore.
Right. Which was unfortunate.
It was very unfortunate. They were very nice people
Very
to do
good
business
people.
with.
And across the street was Guston's Brothers, which
Yes.
was a mill shop.
That's right.
And a contracting
One of our
company.
good customers.
I bet.
Right, absolutely, I'm sure. Built a lot of homes around Lexington.
right.
Built a lot of churches, too.
That's right.
Right. All interesting.
Yeah.
So here we are you finished
In
your
Lexington.
years at the
10 years.
Baldwin.
These are
10 years, 10 years.
So, yeah, you did 10-year cycles.
And then you
So
worked
I
in your
decided
home.
to open my own
Yeah.
accounting business, and I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it very, very much. And Bob Lina of Lexington family was our CPA, and I worked with him for 10 years.
You worked in your home, is that right?
Well,
Out of your home?
yes, just I had a small office I kept
your
in my
home,
home because
right.
we had expanded our house. And but Bob Lina was the Lexington's CPA all these years, and I spoke to him about my own. I was going to open up my own business, and I said, "I've worked with you. What do you think? Do you think it's a good idea or not?" He said, "I think it's a great idea, and I'll be your first customer."
Wonderful.
Which was great. It was a compliment to me, but I
Of course
enjoyed it
was.
very much.
Yeah. Terrific.
So his office was out in Framingham,
Oh,
so it meant I had a
Okay.
little riding to
a
do.
little drive to do.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
you drove down 128
And-
then to get
Yep.
to Framingham,
And-
I'm sure.
And watched it be expanded.
Expand with all the commercialism that took place.
Yeah.
Do you remember in Framingham a place called Shoppers World? I don't know if it's still there.
I remember when that whole, Sherry was in first grade when that whole area in Framingham opened up.
Right.
And I remember Sherry's first day at school. We didn't have to have a babysitter. Al and I went out and were there that day that it opened.
Oh, really?
And you know
At
they have
Shoppers World,
Fruity's
yeah.
Pass out there is a road that goes through
Right.
it
Oh,
is
from
that
Doug
right?
Foodie. Fruity's
Interesting.
Pass is still there.
Well, we got to
Now-
bring you back to Lexington.
Okay.
Sorry. I drifted a little.
And
Okay.
this is drifting maybe a little bit too, but you took flying lessons for a while.
Yes,
and
I
because
did.
You were interested in
But I was
airplanes.
too old.
Oh,
I was 70.
ooh, wow! And you wanted to start.
And I
flying
thought
at
that
70.
I could do it, but there was one area when I was doing takes off and so forth in Laconia, New Hampshire. And they talked about something that was going on at the other end of the field. I couldn't see it.
Okay.
Decided that was the end of my flying.
But you were interested in it, so you've gotten involved in something down on the Cape,
Yes.
Cape Cod.
I'm very happy to mention this. The Massachusetts Air and Space Museum, now located in Hyannis,
Oh, in Hyannis.
and about to open again
Oh,
now
you
at
mean
this
after-
period.
after
They have
COVID?
moved from another area in
Oh.
Hyannis. They had been out at the airport.
And you still serve on their board of advisors?
Yes, I do.
Oh, good for you.
So
And
you-
enjoy it very, very much.
although you've done a good, solid, busy 96 years, you're not
Yeah.
slowing down at all.
No.
You mentioned the other day how you do some 14 Zoom meetings a month.
With all your different activities. We haven't even gotten to some of those activities yet, like the Arts and Crafts Society, Lex Arts. We'll get to that next. But you do between the church and the Air and Space Museum and
Well, gee.
Arts and Crafts and everything you're involved in, 14 Zoom meetings
Well,
a month.
I have two with the Baptist Church,
Uh-huh.
Board of Deacons and the Board of Missions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what else do I do? Massam is not necessarily every month, but it could
Yeah,
be during the month that I talk with one of them and so forth.
But that's a lot. I mean, a lot of people don't even know how to use Zoom. And here you are, you do a lot of them every month. So
It wasn't
that's
around
impressive.
2-3 years ago before the pandemic.
No,
Right. No.
Is that right?
no.
You've picked
I
it up
enjoy
very-
that sort of thing.
Good.
I enjoy it. It's
And
fun.
you're not afraid of learning new things
No.
and,
No.
No.
getting comfortable with them.
There are still things. I have a cell phone, and there are still things on it that I don't know. So
Oh, same with us.
I'll
That's
get
true
there.
with us as well.
But tell us about the arts, or it's now Lex Arts.
Lex
but how
Art.
long have you been involved with Lexington Arts and
Since,
Crafts Society?
See, my husband died in 1982. I think it was like 1984 that one of the woodworkers, I used to do woodworking with my husband.
Oh.
And he liked to do things, but I liked to refinish things. I didn't like to build furniture, but I enjoyed refinishing it. And one of the gals in the group used to come into the lumber company and got to know her quite well there. And she did woodwork professionally.
Oh.
And she got me interested in it, so I went down and became the treasurer pretty quick, you know, of
In
that.
1984, thereabouts.
About 86 that was.
Okay.
And enjoyed that again. You know, over the years it's been wonderful to work with good people, nice people.
Yeah.
And so I had fun with that.
Then that evolved to a different guild.
Yes, yes. Then I found that they really are professional builders in that group, and that was out of my league.
In the
Even
woodworking
In the
group.
woodworking.
Okay.
And so I like very much the decorating arts. Take anything at all, and if it's standing still, I'll paint it.
Look out.
Watch out. I got to keep moving. Okay.
And you were treasurer of a couple of the
Of course,
guilds.
of course, of
You like
course.
to work with money.
And I'm also involved with the DAR in Lexington.
Oh, okay.
And they're very active, which is
Good.
great. I'm an advisor on that.
Wonderful. Gee.
I
So
belong.
you don't keep their books, huh?
No, I'm not. I kept. I kept one client. I retired from my firm in 1987.
Okay.
But I kept one client I'd worked for. She was an endodontist in Arlington. And I had worked with her for over 25 years. And she was still going to work for a while, and I decided to be fun just to stay with her. She retired in last February, and that's when I fully retired.
At 95.
95
Well,
and a half.
Yeah, 95.
Whoa.
Don't forget the half. She
I like
likes
the way you not only count your years, but your months.
Okay, I think we want to talk about Lexington Center because you have, and Countryside, because you lived on East Street down near Lowell Street. So Countryside was an area you knew a lot about, and the same with the center. So let's talk about Countryside first.
All right. Maybe as we were driving this morning, I pointed out that there was a butcher shop in that area.
Oh, yeah. You said it was on Laconia Street.
It was in that area, in not Laconia.
Oh,
Well,
that's
it
the
might
street
have been.
we were on. And
It
you-
might have been Laconia. I'm not sure.
yeah.
But it's right in that area. It was the only thing. It was only
Now,
no
as you
other houses.
went down Lowell Street, Countryside
Well,
is
there was
the
a
corner.
detour this morning, so we had to go down
Right.
Laconia.
Okay, you had
Yeah.
to go down Laconia.
Right.
But that's anyway one store
There was
that
a-
was
Right.
there. Okay.
But there was, because we're putting together a program soon to be broadcast on all the piggeries in Lexington. And there was a piggery and a butcher shop down, a butcher place or a slaughterhouse on Laconia Street, somewhere in the back there.
Oh.
I
many,
think
many
we're
years
talking
ago.
about the same
I
thing.
bet we
Right,
are.
and I think that's perhaps the same thing. And this would have been in the 40s, maybe into the 50s, and I guess the town stopped allowing piggeries in the early 60s. But the Countryside area, which is the corner of Woburn Street and Lowell Street,
Yeah.
had a number of different shops and stores
Right.
there. And I'm sure you patronize those shops
Yep.
regularly because you were just an easy walk down Lowell Street.
Well, for years, I don't know. You know, I don't ever remember walking down that street.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
But there was a little store that he sold. His name was Currier. It was a Mr.
The
Currier.
Curriers owned
Yeah,
that
yeah.
whole
He owned
corner.
that whole area there.
Right.
And he had this little store that he used to serve hot dogs and
A market,
a
kind
little.
of.
Oh, but it's little.
Yeah.
It was little, and that was fun. And that's where you could get a pony ride. Someone else had ponies.
Oh, they had the pony
on
ring there.
Sundays,
We're
and
gonna
it was
be
right beside him. And so anybody that rode would get down, and I used to get down just to try out his ponies. And
We're going to be showing a picture of the pony ring right at Countryside there.
Oh,
Right
great.
behind Mr. Currier's
great! Oh, that's great.
business. So do you remember the restaurant that was there? It closed during World War II, so you might not
I don't know.
remember that.
No, because
right where
I didn't.
Dunkin' Donuts was.
I didn't live
was.
there at that time.
No, not
No,
during
I don't
World War II,
remember
right,
that.
okay.
But it seemed that he sold, well, maybe he kept it and developed that little mall that was there.
Yes.
Did
he might have
was there a
owned it.
gas station with his place too?
Yeah.
Did he?
There must have
There
been.
was, because we can show a picture of that
Okay.
too.
Okay. And the hardware store, which is now Shattuck's, but was Cunningham for two
Across the
generations.
street.
Across the street at
And
the
that
corner.
was later. From
And it's but that hardware store is still
Yep.
still there and very much an important part of the businesses
right,
of
it's an
Lexington.
Ace Hardware now.
Ace.
Correct, right.
But you remember when Mr. Cunningham ran it? It was Cunningham.
Courier. Oh, Mr. Cunningham. Oh, yes, very much.
Cunningham
yes.
had the hardware
Yes,
store.
yes.
Courier had everything across the street.
Yes, yes.
Right, right.
Yes.
And you knew Mr. Courier, or Betty. You
I knew
Betty.
Betty Courier. She and
Right.
I were in the same class in Parker School.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
And speaking of being in the same class, I don't want to forget this, because back this past spring, we did an interview with Stephen Cupp, who was part of the Cupp greenhouse family on Woburn Street, so kind of the same neighborhood. And your husband, Alan, graduated from Lexington High School with Stephen Cupp.
yes, 1939.
1939. And we did an interview with Stephen, and he's 101 years old now.
Yes.
Still living in Lexington.
Still living in-
Yeah.
yeah.
And he was a friend of Alan's.
Yes, I talked with him a week or so ago.
Oh,
Yes.
he's a very nice gentleman.
Very nice gentleman.
So
yeah.
tell us about
Okay.
your memories of Lexington Center in your married years. You came back, married Alan, but came back to Lexington in '49. You've been in your house 72, 73 years now.
Yes.
And what were the things that you remember most about Lexington Center?
Well, I wrote them down, and I will let you know right from here. Do you remember Bateman's?
Oh, yes, my mother worked at Bateman's.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, yeah.
That I remember. They're a very nice store. In fact, I think my sister-in-law, Jean Ward, worked at Bateman's
Oh,
for quite a few
okay.
years and
Yep.
enjoyed it very much. Yes, I remember them. And Baker's. The Baker
Oh.
family was wonderful.
Oh, Bessie Baker.
Yes.
I don't remember her husband, but Bessie.
Yeah.
And we used to buy all our Girl Scout and Brownie uniforms there. And you could get your badges there
That's
and
right.
all that kind of thing.
I remember that too.
And they had fabric, and it was just a
Yeah.
great.
They sold
hat.
everything for so-and-sos.
Yeah. Yeah, anything a woman needed, they had it.
Bakers and
Now,
Bateman's were two
going
great
back
stores.
quick, just for a minute on Bateman's, they were in a number of different locations over the years, isn't that
Yeah,
right?
across the street and further up. I'm talking starting down at Bateman's.
Which was was that in the Hunt block, or was it sort of in the area where CVS is now?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Ba-
it was in that
Bateman's?
area.
Weren't they
Bacon,
on-
next one up.
Were they ever on Waltham Street back
No.
in the 50s? Okay.
I remember when the post office was on Waltham Street,
Sure.
and the whole thing was about as big as this room.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but getting back to Bateman's, I thought it was down where, well, DeSelle's was, and most recently Panera Bread.
They were, one time they were across the street, and then they were where Panera Bread was.
Oh, they did move
They
there.
did move.
Okay.
They were in both
Next
places.
to Viano's, but
Yep,
Viano's
yep,
was,
yep. Yep.
do you remember, tell us about Viano's.
Well, I remember Bud Viano. I hadn't remembered that before. Remember Bud Viano? He was in my age group, and I knew his wife very well. In fact, one of his children came to my school.
Oh.
And I liked Viano's. They had a good reputation.
And what did they have there?
I
Gas
It was a
station?
gas station. They sold Buick automobiles.
Yeah.
Right across from the post office.
Right across from
and
the
they were
post
in
office.
business well into the 70s, I think,
Oh, yeah.
late 60s, 70s. And now it is, I don't know what they are, the Lexington,
Yeah, but what's the name of the building? Right across from the
Yeah.
post office.
I don't remember the name of buildings either.
it has a restaurant in it now, but I don't recall
Yeah.
the name of the restaurant.
Well, it was Lex.
It was
the
Lex for many
Lex
years.
restaurant
yeah.
for many years.
It was Aesop to Bagels, wasn't it? Or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Clay Restaurant now.
Yeah,
It was
Clay
something like that.
something,
I
Clay
don't,
Oven
I'm
or
not
something.
sure.
Yeah.
But
Can't recall.
that
It's a
whole
nice
area
restaurant.
there, they
It's
had
a
they
nice
sold
restaurant.
cars, and they repaired cars.
Yes.
It was a real auto
The
mechanic
Vianas
area.
were a prominent family in town. They owned the
Yeah.
movie theater.
That's
for
right.
years. I
Yeah.
think they
That's
still
right.
own the building.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that whole block, I think they
That's
still
right.
own through a family trust or something.
Yeah.
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 They were nice people.
But it was a very active and busy community in the center.
Yeah.
All sorts of merchants.
all sorts.
You know,
All
certainly, I'm sure, remember Michelson's because they were there. They're there
I
today,
remember
and they
the
were there
great
then.
grandfather.
So,
Yes.
well, okay,
The one
there was
that
Dick
when it was he
Michelson.
just repaired shoes when he first
Correct.
came.
Right. And I think
But
it was Harold, his son.
Harold was the first one to
So
have shoes.
Harold, you remember Harold's
Yeah,
father.
yeah.
So you remember Dick's grandfather.
Right.
Correct.
And he's the one that started a shoe repair store?
Harold did. Yeah.
Oh,
Harold started the
Oh, I thought
shoes.
the selling of shoes.
Well, the grandfather was still working in the back.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But
Okay.
I think the grandfather originally started repairing shoes on a little spot on Waltham Street, but I can't.
Don't remember that. He
I
was
don't
always
remember.
where he
But
on Michael's.
he was on Mass Ave, and
Yeah.
Harold ran the shoe store.
Yep.
He was quite a character, and
Yeah.
then his son, and now his Dick's son.
Yep.
Two sons,
Yep.
Eric
Jerry.
and Jerry.
Yep.
Yep.
Still run the shop.
Yep. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's at least
Yeah.
four
Yeah,
generations.
over 100 years
Yep.
selling shoes
And imagine that.
And
Just imagine
in
it.
the
Very-
same spot.
Very close to them was Theater Pharmacy. What do you remember about Theater Pharmacy?
Well, I remember that they sold ice cream and sodas.
Yep, they had a soda fountain.
Yep.
And there were probably 2 or 3 drugstores in the center in those days that had soda fountains.
Yeah, that's right. I think
Rexall.
if you were a drugstore, you had a soda fountain.
Right, and-
All over.
I remember Rexall's down where
Yeah,
sort of where
further down.
CVS is, a little further down.
Yes, and then there was one, it was owned by, he and his wife ran it, and I knew his daughter was, I think, in Sherry's class, and I can't bring up
Yeah.
the name right now. But it's a nice drugstore over near the 5 and 10.
That was Jaime Doodlesacks.
Yeah,
Well, that was the Rexall.
That was
Okay,
the Rexall,
okay.
right? Right.
Right, that
Okay.
was Rexall's was Jaime Doodlesack.
Do you recall one across from the movie theater in the Hunt Block? Was there a drugstore there in your time?
I don't remember it there, no.
But Lexington Center had, what, 2 or 3 hardware stores in the center?
Well, I know they had 2,
Right, okay, Lawrence Hardware,
and across the street,
right? And then there was one on, close to where Rankatori's ice cream shop is now. Somewhere in there on Mass
yes,
Ave by
yes,
Waltham Street.
that was one of our favorites. I don't know why. I don't know why we didn't go to Lawrence, but we did go to the other one.
Right.
And I know that gentleman there, Al and I were just starting out in our new house and so forth, painting this and this. And that gentleman in there was so helpful to the two of us. And of course, I like doing that sort of thing too. And so I was very much interested into what was going on. But he helped us so much on what kind of paint and how to
That's
put it on.
Too
and
bad we
so
don't have a
forth.
hardware store in
It was
Lexington Center
wonderful for
anymore.
people that didn't know what a brush was
Or a can of paint.
or a can of paint.
But getting back to
Well-
drugstores, there was one at the corner too.
Yes,
It was,
always one at the corner.
Yeah, Jaime Doodles.
No.
No, it was Tiviage's.
Tiviage's, but,
Right at
but
the
then
corner,
it
the
became
actual
Colonial
corner.
Drug.
Right.
That was a place that had a very unsavory reputation. I was not allowed in there either.
No kidding.
Right at the corner. Yeah, they
I
sold
mostly went
things they
to Theater Pharmacy.
Yeah.
Theater Pharmacy's good operation.
Oh, yeah.
That's been
But
there
it-
forever.
Right.
I want to ask Wilda if she remembers the Ross radio store. Ross.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
We had
In fact,
just
Sherry and I were
recently
talking about that this
Paul
morning.
Ross. We just had an interview with Paul Ross, the son of the husband and wife that ran the radio store. Do you remember the day in the early days of television and all that they sold televisions there too?
I've only been in their store a couple of times, and I don't know if we bought anything or not, but I know it was a very nice store.
Well, Paul Ross is actually on the committee now, the Lexington Remembers Committee.
Oh.
Yeah, he knows so much
Yeah,
about
I remember,
Lexington that we
I
thought he'd
remember
be
it was
good.
there. Was
Yeah.
there a Betsy Ross involved with it?
It might have been his mother.
Betsy Ross, really?
Betsy
I think
Ross.
so,
She
too.
was a
She-
flag
I
maker.
think so
She's a
too.
flag maker.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Betsy or not, but both Paul's father and his mother were very busy. She was a interior decorator.
Oh, is that right?
Oh,
He
that's
had interesting
interesting.
stories to tell us. Pull up his interview and watch it. I think you would enjoy it.
I
He
will.
has pictures of the store that we're
Great.
speaking of. Okay.
And talking about unsavory places, the
You were talking
colonial,
about unsavory
the
places.
Colonial drugstore at the corner where Rankatori's ice cream is now, that we were not allowed to go into
Really?
that store.
I didn't hear about all these things.
But, well, this was during the 50s, I guess, and early
Okay.
60s. But also the bowling alley, which we'd like, do you remember the bowling alley? Because
Yeah.
that had an unsavory reputation, too.
Oh,
You-
in your day, Beverly, but
Okay.
I think when Wilda was there, you bowled there a lot with your lady friends, right?
A lot.
In the basement.
And not only that, I was only one of probably 6 groups the nights that I was there.
So you
Which would
bowled
be
in the
like once a
evenings.
week or
Okay.
once a month. I can't remember. We bowled a lot.
And-
But that was busy every single night with.
And where was
groups.
this located, Wilda?
Under, what's
In
the
the
first?
basement?
Under the basement of Bateman's.
Or where DeSelle's was, where Panera Bread was.
Panera Bread.
It's a bike store
It's a
now,
bike
I
shop
think. It
just
keeps
opened up
evolving.
recently.
But you
And
know,
there's
if you-
banks there now. and
Yes.
I
stuff.
think there is a bag. If you look over I don't know if the door is still there. This was Candlepin, and there are Candlepin.
Masonry,
Masonry.
pieces
No,
in the
right.
brick.
That's about where where you'd go downstairs.
Down the
Yeah,
cellar
that's
stairs,
where it
right.
was. That
and
was
the
telling
alleys were
you
down,
that's
you
where
go
the
down on
bowling
the
alley
right.
is.
No, it was a very nice place to be.
Oh, okay. Well,
You know, isn't that
I
interesting?
think it changed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just my recollection.
Well, I think
anyway.
bowling, for some
20
reason, and I don't know why, went out as a thing to do. Look,
Yeah,
there's none now.
a little bit. It
So
did.
many more things came into being to
Right.
keep people busy and active in the 50s and 60s. Bowling became less popular, I guess.
Well, I think TV came in.
TV meant,
I
they stayed
think
home and
that
watched
made a
TV.
And
Huge
women were
difference.
able to work.
That too.
Where
Yep.
before, not a lot of
Right,
women
so
worked.
True.
Everyone got busier, just as you could keep getting busier and
That's
busier
right.
yourself. Whether you're 96 years old or not, doesn't matter to you. You stay busy.
That's right.
Another thing about the center, you said Alan was the youngest of 6.
Yes.
But he had older siblings who lived in the center, in
Yes.
Lexington Center. And where did they live in the center?
Well, I know that Connie and Charlie lived over the theater.
The movie theater's
And
still
there are
there.
still apartments in that building today.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know. See, they were older than I was. And
Right.
So I knew they lived in that building. Mm-hmm. That's all that I knew. In the other building.
Well, the Hunt Block, which was right across the street from that,
Yep.
where, what's there now? Bertucci's, that area.
Yeah.
That was a big brick building,
Yep.
and there were definitely apartments on the second floor of that
And
building.
maybe the third also.
And maybe
Right,
the
'cause
third.
that was a 3-story building, as
Yeah.
was the center block, which is now the Giroux building where, what's the restaurant everyone likes?
Yeah, I can't remember the names of the building.
Villago.
The Alagos, right. And there were a lot of apartments there. I remember I had friends that lived in there. I
Yeah.
grew up on Clark Street, so.
I'm
we
not sure
had
which
friends
one of
there.
them lived there,
That
but
was a
somebody
big,
did.
huge wooden structure.
Yeah,
and it
I
burned in
remember
a s-
being in the brick one once,
Okay.
and
Yeah, those were big
The
buildings.
other one was-
Lexington had tall buildings, and Lexington
Yeah.
had many residences in the center of town back in those
Yeah.
days.
The central block, the one at the corner of Merriam Street, was the big wooden structure. It was 3
Yeah.
stories, just a massive building, burned in a pretty spectacular fire. Maybe it was in the early 70s.
1970,
70?
71,
Yeah,
somewhere
so-
around there.
wow.
Right across from the library.
Okay.
And then they built the Giroux building after
Now,
that.
across from the center block, you remember the buildings where the Douglas Funeral Home used to be, and there was a little mews you used to go in, and there were different shops there, too.
Yes,
right?
I know there was a barber shop. Alan used to go to the
Right.
barber shop there.
Do you remember the Lexington News, the paper store that was on there, had penny candy and
Yes,
all
I
sorts
do.
of interesting things to buy?
Yes.
And
Yes, there were interesting stores along that little
that's right.
Muse
They
area.
were all with merchants, all probably lived in Lexington, were very involved with the community, and all had a caring way about them in their customers. And they had all sorts of things to sell.
Yeah.
We had many ladies' clothing stores, men's clothing stores. Do you recall any of the women's clothing stores?
Not there, no. I
No, not
remember
there,
the-
but there was Laura Lane's.
Laura
Oh,
Lane's. Do you remember
yes.
Laura Lane's?
Yes.
On the corner of
Yes.
Waltham Street and Mass Ave.
Country
Yes.
Flair.
Country Flair was on Waltham Street.
What
I
was
don't
the one-
remember Country Flair,
Country
but
Flair.
I do remember that.
Was it the one right at the corner at the traffic light at Waltham Street in Massachusetts?
Yes.
That's Laura
yes.
Lane.
That was Laura Lane's?
And there was another company there too, maybe later on.
Yeah. And men's stores, Reedy's Men's Store and
Reedy's
Mayen's.
was there.
Mayen's.
Very
Right.
good men's
Right.
stores with
And
Reedy's.
Mayen's.
I'd forgotten Mayenz's.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That was another good store. You know, these people in town that ran these stores were awfully good to their customers.
Yeah. Well, their
really-
customers were very important to
They
them.
Right.
were,
And
but
they,
they're not like they are now. You could go in there and somebody would teach you something.
You still get that kind of service at Michaelson's and Theater Pharmacy.
Yes,
And maybe some others, but those are the
Yes.
two that
Yes.
have kept to the good customer service ways.
yes.
I think the difference was when you had an owner-operator, there was a real
Yeah.
vested interest to keep a
Right.
good relationship
think so,
between
too.
customers and the merchants.
Yeah.
Today, perhaps businesses that are there are run by not owners, but just employees of corporations
Yeah.
from who knows where.
Yeah. I will say I still get that nice feeling, a friendly feeling at Theater Pharmacy.
Yes.
New
Yes.
people have taken
Yes.
over, but they've
They have.
hired very nice people.
And
that
they've
help
kept
you.
some of the ones who work there.
They have, and they are good
years.
people.
Right. And you knew the man who owned it before
Jackie
Veneer.
Ray.
I
Jackie
knew them,
Ray.
yes,
Yeah.
very much.
Before
Okay.
the Viano family.
And before
No,
that,
Veneer.
Veneer, excuse me.
Yeah.
and before that.
Right.
And before that, okay. But getting back to this little muse area down almost to the library, you remember that well, and you mentioned briefly that Douglas Funeral Home was there. I don't know if any of the viewers watching this will remember when Douglas Funeral Home was there, because they've been in town a long time.
That's
but now,
right.
of course, they're over on Worthen Road.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, they buried my grandfather in 1955. I remember going in the Douglas Funeral Home.
There,
And
right.
right there on the
Mass Ave.
avenue. And right where the Crafty Yankee is now
Yep.
was this little muse area,
Yep.
different
Right.
building.
Different buildings.
And then to the left of that was the
bank.
there was a
Well-
the bank at the corner, Lexington Trust,
Now, there was a bank in there.
in the middle there too.
Yeah, I think it's still
Okay.
there.
Yeah, there is a bank
Yeah.
there.
That area had the Lexington News,
And
then
Lexington Ski and
Foster's,
Sport.
At some
Lexington Ski
point.
and Sports.
And I remember at the end of the Muse was a blacksmith.
Oh yeah, we talked about that
yes,
earlier.
tell
right.
about that. That's
Do you
interesting.
remember walking all the way down
All
the
the way
alley of the
down.
Muse, or the corridor of the Muse, and you go out
Right.
the back door,
Right.
and there was an old blacksmith there who shoed horses.
Yep. I think you had to go through the Lexington Muse
Yes.
to get to it. Yes,
Well,
I remember.
and then they had the front building on Muzzy Street,
Yep.
the barns in the back.
Yep.
See, I grew up on Clark Street. I remember
Yeah.
those. Even in the 50s, they were shoeing horses
yes,
over there.
yes,
even in the
yes,
50s.
Yeah.
And he remembers that once they stopped shoeing horses, they made things
Oh, they
out
very
of
quickly,
horseshoes
everything
and
was
put a
gone.
little gift shop there,
Yeah.
made things out of horseshoes.
Yeah.
And speaking of horses, and that leads me to farms, what farms do you remember in Lexington?
Now that's very interesting. In
We've
that
only got a few
I
more
can't
minutes.
help you there very, very
Okay.
much. I knew that Lexington was a farming community,
Mm-hmm.
and
Burnham
even-
Farm,
Right,
though.
Burnham Farm was still
okay,
active.
Burnham Farm's good. That's a good one.
Even in
but
the
they, now
50s.
those people, it was mostly market gardeners.
Right, they
There
took
wasn't
their
a lot
wares to Boston.
of animals.
Okay,
That we were probably
Oh.
the only people that had cows
over on Grove Street.
over in Grove Street.
Okay.
We even where I live right now was what we call market gardens,
Right.
and
Oh,
that was
the
all over the
plant-
place.
The place, there's condos there now, right near you on Lowell Street. Plant Action, that was some kind of a farm, had greenhouses.
That was Peterson's greenhouse.
Peterson's greenhouse was
Oh, do you-
there, and
Right.
that was just one kind of flower.
Right.
Really? You
A lot of the
remember
hot-
Peterson?
Well, you
Oh, yeah.
remember Porter and Wilson's greenhouses on
Oh
East,
yes, very
on,
much so. Again, there's vegetables.
Right, on
Yes.
East Street.
Very friendly with the Porters and the Wilsons. Very much,
Right,
I knew them.
right.
Yeah.
And what about the Bowser Estate on Grant Street?
That was such an exciting thing to have built during the 20s and 30s. Paul Bowser's wife was a lady wrestler.
Really? I didn't know that.
I know that because John Murphy was involved with them, my cousin.
Right. They would have the wrestlers. They lived out there in the Bowser Estate, did they?
I'm not sure of that. They had horses out there.
They had horses out
Yeah.
there.
Did you ride
they had
there?
surreys.
And well, it
Sulky,
wasn't
so I
for,
guess
they
you
had
call it.
racehorses.
Oh, yes,
And
the
they
track.
would train the racehorses.
Do you remember
and
the
stuff
track
there.
that was
Yeah,
there?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes we would meet there, and of course they had Grant Street was dirt road, except in front of their house.
Ah,
And they planted some trees in front of their house.
oh, okay.
And it was kind of fun to go down Grant Street, and there's another little road right there, and
Colony Road.
Yes, and that's where the road stopped being paved. And
Oh,
it was a
okay.
Grant Street. The rest on the
this
East
period-
Street, which
Okay.
a Grant Street was not paved.
This
either.
period of time would have been the
Before the war.
before the war in
Yeah.
the 40s. Do you remember Carlson's Florist at the corner
Yes,
of
I do.
Grant and East?
Oh, I remember
Yes, I
that.
do.
Because they
Oh,
were there
yeah.
well into the 60s and 70s.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And you lived on East Street. I'm sure you remember East Street used to have a much bigger curve in it, and they straightened it out.
No, I don't remember that.
They
Yeah.
redid it probably in the 50s.
But I know there were vegetable farmers on East Street.
Sure. Well, the Dorans had
And
a
the
ton of
Dorans
land.
are still there.
Right.
Yeah.
But all that land in the back, which is now Holmes Road,
Yes.
Burroughs Road, Thoreau Road.
Beautiful
That was the Burnham Farm.
That's right.
you know,
that's
and that was a
right.
truck farmer. I mean, he took his wares.
Yeah, it turned into, I don't know another cattle place that had, I don't know another
Yeah.
one that had cattle
Lexington
at
done a
all.
lot of pig
And my
raising,
father's
turkey
business
farms.
was over all of New England, so he didn't
Right.
care where.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His business was marketing the cattle
Yeah.
for butchering or
No.
cattle for like oxen and cattle
That's
for
all it was. My father would go and buy cattle and have
Work
an auction
cattle.
and sell.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those that didn't like the automobile and kept using cattle.
Yeah, it was very busy. I now take decorating art lessons out in Marlborough. My teacher is out there on Wednesdays, and I'm driving through Route 2A, and then to Route 2, and then to Sudbury Road. And when I go in that back road out to Marlborough, it's all the area where my father and I used to go with him a lot. Would go to different farms that were out there, and he'd sell his cattle, you know. He was selling them.
He
to
would
the-
bring them out in a trailer?
no. He himself and I would go in a car,
Okay.
and he would visit with them and saying he would buy them. You see, he was a dealer.
Oh, so he would buy them from the farmers.
Sure,
and
sure.
then
And they had
auction
some
them
they
off.
wanted to sell, and he would buy them.
Did he
Or
sell-
they would come to the auction and buy new.
Did he auction milking cows too?
No.
Just
They,
cattle.
he hired quite a few because we had cattle on our property in Lincoln all the time. So he hired people, and he did sell milk. It was in containers there in the milk room, and a guy came and took the milk.
And the farm that you rented on Grove Street, the Simonds Farm, you had cattle there because he was coming
Same-
and going.
it was- yeah.
But did you also have horses there?
Oh yes, there were
'Cause
always. You see, my father dealt in horses also,
Oh.
which is why I learned to ride at 3 or 4 years old.
Wow. Only English saddle.
Only English. That's right. I have
it's-
ridden Western, but
Okay.
I was taught English, and I prefer English.
You prefer English.
Let's touch on the mounted.
The Lexington Mounted Patrol.
Yes,
tell
that you were a
us.
part of. Tell us
Yes,
about that.
that's a wonderful group. There were about, I'd say, 18 or 20 of us. The Tropianos, like Joe, Joe or
Joe and Louie and
Louis.
Patrick.
Louis was mostly the one of that, and we were organized. We had shirts that all looked fine. We had red shirts and black riding pants. And we got together maybe once a month and ride all over Lexington
As a group.
as a group. And it was such fun. I mean, it was social and so forth. Then we would escort Paul Revere from the Lexington line. And many
Oh.
times he needed help.
You're talking about
Patriots Day celebration.
Patriots Day.
Okay, okay.
Patriots
And
What
they
do you
Day.
mean
do the
you needed
reenactment
help?
of the Paul Revere's ride in
Yes.
Dawes.
We would bring him up to the center where they would greet Paul Revere. And the Mounted Patrol went all around, each one of us about every 12 feet we stood all around the green,
Oh,
which
how
was
nice.
Right.
And
And
this
then
was
you
fun.
escorted him to his capture place.
No, we didn't from there on. That was up to him. But
When you say he needed help, what did you?
well, I think that he drank a little bit on the way.
That was
think
part of
they
the
still
tradition
do.
of Paul Revere, and keeping him on his horse was a challenge. I think we're about to wind down our
That's funny.
interview.
Oh,
This has been
okay.
fun.
It
This
was
has been a
always
lot of
fun to us.
Is there anything else, Wilda, that we haven't touched on?
Oh,
that,
my.
Anything on your list there that
Something
you-
that particularly of interest to your
to
memories
Lexington, of course.
of Lexington.
Yeah,
Gee, we've covered a lot.
yeah, we have.
Well, you've covered a lot. You've experienced a lot and participated a lot and contributed a lot to the town.
It's a good town.
It's a very good
It's a
town.
It's a
wonderful
wonderful
town.
town
Yeah.
to work in. I've
Yeah.
enjoyed things so much.
Well, you've gotten involved
I have.
so much,
And that's the way anybody should. They should get involved.
Right.
Right, right.
As I say, I enjoy right now being on these committees and able to and add something to them, you
Yep.
know. And
Terrific.
it's great. And
Well, we thank you very much for being here, and we hope all our viewers will
Enjoy.
just Google Lexington Remembers and then on YouTube, and you'll be able to see Wilda. It might take a while for this interview to get online, but it will be.
what a pleasure.
So it was great, Wilda.
A lot of
Thank
fun,
you.
Wilda, and
It's
thank
been
you very
Many
much.
more happy years, 96 and a half, and going,
you so
and going
much.
very strong.
I
Thank you
wish
so
to be
much.
only half as active and energetic
know.
as you if I can reach
Aren't
96.
you
Yeah.
nice?
Yeah,
Aren't you
terrific.
nice?
Well, this has been a wonderful interview, and we thank you so much, Wilda Ward, for joining us. And actually, Wilda's been was interviewed for a World War II interview a
Yes.
couple years ago.
Yes.
So you can see her twice.
Yes.
This is your second time joining Lexington Remembers. So
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us.
And sharing all those great memories you have.
Well,
and
it's a
stay
pleasure.
active, Wilda. The town needs folks like you.
Yes.
Thank
we
you
do.
so much. It's been my pleasure all the way through.
Thank
And we
you.
hope
and
our
thanks for
viewers at
joining
home
us.
will look at some of these other interviews also. Thank you.
And we look forward to doing others.